Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 20, Text 29, as translated with commentaries by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So we're getting a tour here of the title of Chapter 20 is the study of the structure of the universe. And there are many different areas, sections, different living entities, different people live in different ways. They have different geography and ways of worshiping the Supreme Lord. And this chapter 29, text 29, is a continuation of these descriptions. And they seem, some of these descriptions seem quite fantastic, because in our limited experience, we have never seen such things. And we tend to think that only what we can perceive with our limited senses in this body, limited body, is factual. It's kind of like because it's 7 o'clock in the morning here, it must be 7 o'clock in the morning everywhere, because the climate is a certain way here. When I look out my window, I see a certain climate, certain vegetation, certain trees. Then it must be like that everywhere. But it's not. This is just perceived through our limited senses. So we're hearing we accept these authorities in the Vedas, Vedic authorities, realized souls, accepting these descriptions of places and people and activities that are beyond our immediate perception through our limited senses. So they seem quite fantastic. It's like most of us have never been to China, and the only way we know about China is we hear from someone who has been in China, or we get descriptions, or we get information, not necessarily directly through our own direct experience, but we get information about China indirectly, and we accept it. Oh yes, China's like this. People that live there are like this. Their government is like this. Their climate is like that. And we accept it, but not by our direct experience. We're very, very far away from China, thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away. So these descriptions also is beyond our limited senses to understand. So we're accepting these authorities that yes, this is what these atmospheres are like. These are what these oceans are like. This is what these people are like. So it seems fantastic. It is fantastic. It's wonderful to hear about how great the creation really is. So, text 29. Outside the ocean of yogurt is another island known as Pushkaradweep, which is 6,400,000 yojanas, or 51,200,000 miles wide, twice as wide as the ocean of yogurt. It is surrounded by an ocean of very tasteful water, as broad as the island itself. On Pushkaradweep there is a great lotus flower with 100 million pure golden petals, as effulgent as the flames of fire. Lotus flower is considered the sitting place of Lord Brahma, who is the most powerful living being, and who is therefore sometimes called Bhagavan. And there is no commentary, there is no purport. Text 30. In the middle of that island is a great mountain named Manasottara, which forms the boundary between the inner side and the outer side of the island. Its breadth and height are 10,000 yojanas, or 80,000 miles. On that mountain, in the four directions, are the residential quarters of demigods such as Indra. In the chariot of the sun god, the sun travels on the top of the mountain in an orbit called the Samvatsar, encircling Mount Meru. The sun's path on the northern side is called Uttarayana, and its path on the southern side is called Dakshinayana. One side represents a day for the demigods, and the other represents their night. Prabhupada's commentary. The movement of the sun is confirmed in Brahma Samhita, Yasyagnaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakra. The sun orbits around Mount Sumeru for 6 months on the northern side and 6 months on the southern side. This adds up to the duration of a day and night of the demigods in the upper planetary systems. Text 31. The ruler of this island, the son of Maharaj Priyavatra named Vitihotra, had 2 sons named Ramanaka and Dataki. He granted the 2 sides of the island to these 2 sons, and then personally engaged himself in activities for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like his elder brother made Atiti. Text 32. For the fulfillment of material desires, the inhabitants of this tract of land worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead as represented by Lord Brahma. They offer prayers to the Lord as follows. So Lord Brahma is the original spiritual master in our sampradaya, coming through the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. It's the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. So these residents are worshipping Lord Brahma, and this is their prayer. Lord Brahma is also our spiritual master. Lord Brahma is known as Karmamaya, the form of ritualistic ceremonies, because by performing ritualistic ceremonies, one may attain his position, and because Vedic ritualistic hymns become manifest from him. He is devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead without deviation, and therefore, in one sense, he's not different from the Lord. Nevertheless, he should be worshipped not as the monists worship him, but in duality. One should always remain a servitor of the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Worshipful Deity. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Brahma, the form of manifest Vedic knowledge. Interesting that a living entity who qualifies by performing ritualistic ceremonies says, because by performing ritualistic ceremonies one may attain the position of Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma, this Lord Brahma that we have experience of, is a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without deviation. So he is the spiritual master and the founder Acharya of the Brahma Sampradaya. But he is worshipped as a representative of the Lord, not that he's one with the Lord. He's as good as the Lord because of his pure devotion, but at the same time, he's different from the Lord because he's a unique individual living entity. That's the proper understanding. They're explaining, Prabhupada in the personified Vedas. And in this prayer, the residents of Pushkara Dweep, they're explaining, they're revealing their realization of Lord Brahma's position and taking shelter. Say, we therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Brahma, the form of manifest Vedic knowledge. Prabhupada's commentary. In this verse, the word karma mayam, obtainable by Vedic ritualistic system, is significant. The Vedas say, translation, one who strictly follows the principles of Varnashram Dharma for at least 100 births will be rewarded with the post of Lord Brahma. Hare Krishna. It is also significant that although Lord Brahma is extremely powerful, he never thinks himself one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He always knows that he's an eternal servitor of the Lord. Because the Lord and the servant are identical on the spiritual platform, Brahma is herein addressed as Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. But if a devotee serves him with full faith, the meaning of the Vedic literature is revealed to him. Therefore, Brahma is called Brahmalinga, which indicates that his entire form consists of Vedic knowledge. There's no ignorance in Lord Brahma, which means there's no bewilderment by the material energy, which means there's no attachment for enjoying sense gratification. There's no ignorance in Lord Brahma. He's not identified at all with a material form. He's only identifying with transcendental form, which consists of Vedic knowledge. This is Lord Brahma. His entire form consists of Vedic knowledge. He always identifies with being a servant of the Lord. No other purpose. Text 34. Thereafter, beyond the ocean of sweet water, and fully surrounding it, is a mountain named Lokaloka, which divides the countries that are full of sunlight from those not lit by the sunlight. Lokaloka surrounds the ocean of sweet water. Text 35. Beyond the ocean of sweet water is a tract of land as broad as the area between the middle of Mount Sumero and the boundary of Manasotra mountain. In that tract of land there are many living beings. Beyond it, extending to Loka mountain, is another land which is made of gold. Because of its golden surface, it reflects light like the surface of a mirror, and any physical article that falls on that land can never be perceived again. All living entities, therefore, have abandoned that golden land. Gold. It's an interesting description. There's no purport, but it's because the light reflects on the surface like a mirror. Any physical article that falls on that land can never be perceived again. Wow. Everyone has abandoned that golden land. People get lost. They lose themselves with gold, that's for sure. Yeah. They become enamored of that golden color, that gold. They fall into it. It's like falling into something, and they get lost, all right. Yeah. Become entangled by gold, attachment for gold, lust for gold. It's interesting. All the living entities there have abandoned that golden land. They'd rather be able to have their perception than to lose their ability to perceive things. In text 36, between the lands inhabited by living entities and those that are uninhabited stands the great mountain which separates the two, and which is therefore celebrated as Loka. So this golden place is on the other side of Loka, which surrounds the ocean of sweet water. Text 37. By the supreme will of Krishna, the mountain known as Loka has been installed as the outer border of the three worlds. Burloka, Bhuvarloka, and Swarloka, to control the rays of the sun throughout the universe. All the luminaries, from the sun up to Dhruvaloka, distribute their rays throughout the three worlds, but only within the boundary formed by this mountain. Because it is extremely high, extending even higher than Dhruvaloka, it blocks the rays of the luminaries, which therefore can never extend beyond it. To control the rays of the sun throughout the universe. Prabhupada's commentary. When we speak of Lokatraya, we refer to the three primary planetary systems, Bhu, Bhuva, and Swa, into which the universe is divided. Surrounding these planetary systems are the 8 directions: east, west, north, south, northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest. Loka mountain has been established as the outer boundary of all the lokas to distribute the rays of the sun and other luminaries equally throughout the universe. This vivid description of how the rays of the sun are distributed through the different planetary systems of the universe is very scientific. Sukadeva Goswami described these universal affairs to Maharaj Parikshit as he had heard them from his predecessor. He explained these facts 5,000 years ago, but the knowledge existed long, long before, because Sukadeva Goswami received it through disciplic succession. Because this knowledge is accepted through disciplic succession, it is perfect. The history of modern scientific knowledge, on the contrary, does not go back more than a few hundred years. Therefore, even if modern scientists do not accept the other factual presentations of Srimad Bhagavatam, how can they deny the perfect astronomical calculations that existed long before they could imagine such things? There's so much information to gather from Srimad Bhagavatam. Modern scientists, however, have no information of other planetary systems and, indeed, are hardly conversant with the planet on which we are now living. So this is the limitations of trying to gather knowledge through the senses alone, rather than hearing from realized souls. And Prabhupada says these are very scientific descriptions. So, it's not fairy tales or simply symbolism only, with no substance. These are actually substantive descriptions. You can take them quite literally. They're not said to be analogies or metaphors. Prabhupada says this is a scientific description. So, one thing is that some of the information that we get from the acharyas appears to be easily accepted. It just makes sense very easily without challenging our minds and intellects. It just makes sense. Very practical knowledge of everyday activities and dealing with each other, in maintaining our lives peacefully. It actually makes sense. Some of the things no one would challenge. Some of the, like for instance, description in Bhagavad Gita, how this material world is a place of duality, heat and cold, happiness, distress, loss and gain, victory and defeat. One who remains steady, can it reach the self? Easily understood. There's not going to be challenge to that. And that information, that knowledge, is coming from the same source that this information and knowledge is coming from. So that information that we hear and we receive that seems strange to us, the best thing is just to hear it. Just hear it and put it on hold. And at some point, as we make progress in devotional service, we will have realization of these things. It will become our own realized knowledge as we become more surrendered in Krishna consciousness, more freed from material identification, unwanted things, anarthas. Then the things that we don't understand or seem phantasmagoria to us, they won't be. We'll have personal realization. So the best thing to do when we hear something that seems incredible is just listen, just hear it, accept that it's coming from the same source that the other knowledge that we've been easily able to accept. It's coming from the same source. And we just put it on hold and wait for that time and pray for that time when we have realization. And we can see that this is the truth. Yeah. Because we accept the authority. We accept the Vedic authority, the cyclic succession. We accept. Text 38. learned scholars who are free from mistakes, illusions, and propensities to cheat have thus described the planetary systems and their particular symptoms, measurements, and locations. With great deliberation, they've established the truth that the distance between Sumeru and the mountain known as Lokaloka is 1/4 of the diameter of the universe, or in other words, 125 million yojanas, which equals 1 billion miles. There is a commentary here by Prabhupada. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has given accurate astronomical information about the location of Lokaloka mountain, the movements of the sun globe, and the distance between the sun and the circumference of the universe. However, the technical terms used in the astronomical calculations given by Jyotirveda are difficult to translate into English. Therefore, to satisfy the reader, we may include the exact Sanskrit statement given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which records exact calculations regarding universal affairs. So there's a long section of this Sanskrit which Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti has given descriptions, exact measurements, and Prabhupada's explaining that to try to translate it into English for general people who might be reading this, it will be very, very difficult to make it intelligible to them. So for those that actually want to do the research, those mathematicians and physicists that want to do the research, the description is included. But it's in Sanskrit, so they would have to see how to translate it. But it is included. So it has to be a short reading today. And Hare Krishna.